Hey, stuffers. You ever hear a story and your brain just kind of goes, nope, that can't be right? That's a scene from a movie, not real life. Well, get ready, because Alex here, and welcome back to Stuff with Alex. We're not talking about a crime with a neat little bow on it, no. This isn't one of those "the butler did it" stories. We're talking about a man who walked onto a plane, took $200,000 in ransom money, and then did the one thing that should be impossible in the history of crime. He literally jumped out of the plane and disappeared forever. No body, no trace. No one's ever seen him again. What? You don't believe me? That's fair. But the FBI and a whole bunch of really confused people have been scratching their heads about this one for over 50 years. This isn't a story about a criminal getting caught. It's the story of a man who became a legend by becoming a ghost. And trust me, the details are even crazier than the ending.
The year is 1971. The day is November 24th, just before Thanksgiving. And for those of you who were, alive, this was a time when air travel was a little different. No TSA, no full body scans, just a guy with a ticket and maybe a carry-on full of whatever you wanted. A man who appeared to be in his mid-40s, 6 feet tall, and what the authorities would later call nondescript, approached the Northwest Orient Airlines ticket counter in Portland, Oregon. This dude was as plain as unseasoned mashed potatoes. He was wearing a dark suit, a perfectly respectable white shirt, and a black clip-on tie. He pulled out some cash, bought a one-way ticket for Flight 305 to Seattle, and signed the name Dan Cooper. He then sat alone, drinking a bourbon and soda, just another face in the crowd. Nothing to see here. Move along. But what happened next would create a legend. The FBI's famous cases reads like a hall of fame for criminals, and most of them have a clear outcome. You've got the Black Dahlia, whose murder was never solved, but at least there was a body. You've got Jack Gilbert Graham, the bomber, who was caught. But Dan Cooper? He was about to create a case so bizarre it would change air travel forever and become the world's only unsolved case of air piracy. The funny thing is, the entire legend of D.B. Cooper is based on a big, fat American journalism whoopsie. When the United Press International Wire Service was scrambling to get the story out, a reporter named James Long misheard the name Dan and published it as D.B. Cooper. The FBI tried to correct the record the next day, but it was like trying to put the toothpaste back in the tube. The name stuck, and a simple typo became a permanent part of American lore. It's wild to think that a simple slip-up can create a character that lives on in comic books, TV shows, and songs. It's a perfect illustration of how the truth can be warped, even without a malicious intent, simply because a good story or a catchy name travels faster than the facts. It's a foundational part of this entire mystery. Stuffers, smash that like button if you're already confused by this whole thing. Seriously, how does that even happen? Now, Cooper was settled into his seat on the plane, the picture of calm. He ordered his drink, he was polite, and no one suspected a thing. But as the plane took off and began its ascent over the Pacific Northwest, Cooper did something that would send a shiver down the spine of the flight attendant and kick off one of the strangest criminal enterprises in history. He reached into his pocket, pulled out a note, and handed it to the flight attendant sitting next to him. And what she read, well, that's where things get really interesting.
The flight attendant, Tina Mucklow, assumed it was some kind of flirtatious note, a scene right out of a cheesy sitcom. But Cooper, with a calm voice that belied his intentions, told her, "Miss, you'd better look at that note. I have a bomb." Now that's a conversation starter, right? The note itself was terse and to the point. He had a bomb and he was making demands. To prove it, he opened a cheap attaché case just enough for her to catch a glimpse of a jumbled mess of wires and red-colored sticks. Not exactly the nuclear football, but it did the trick. He gave her a new note with his demands to deliver to the pilots. $200,000 in cash, specifically in non-sequential $20 bills, and 4 parachutes. The plane landed in Seattle, where authorities scrambled to get the money and parachutes. The FBI, already on the scene, started collecting the cash and even went so far as to record all of the serial numbers on the bills, a move that would prove to be either brilliant or totally useless later on. While the passengers were released, Cooper kept several crew members on board, including the pilot, a flight engineer, and Tina Mucklow, the flight attendant. What on earth was this guy planning to do with 4 parachutes, right? Drop your wildest theory in the comments. A seasoned skydiver only needs 1, maybe 2. The demand for 4 seems, well, it seems like a big old red herring, doesn't it? It's a classic storytelling device, throwing out a piece of confusing information to misdirect the audience, and in this case, the investigators. This is where the story stops being a simple crime and starts feeling like a carefully plotted psychological thriller. The fact that he asked for 4 was either a genius move to confuse law enforcement into thinking he was an amateur, or maybe he really was just a novice who thought he'd need backups. The ambiguity of his actions is what makes the whole thing so fascinating. With the money and parachutes secured in Seattle, Cooper gave the flight crew a new, even more terrifying set of instructions. He ordered them to take off and set a course for Mexico City. He told them to fly at a low altitude and a slow speed, a combination that made his next move completely predictable and yet utterly unthinkable. What would a man with a bomb, a bag of cash, and a parachute do at 10,000 feet in a Boeing 727? The plane took off from Seattle. It was a dark, moonless night, and a massive storm was raging over the rugged landscape of the Pacific Northwest. Cooper, with his bizarre and specific instructions, had them flying at a snail's pace, under 200 miles per hour, at an altitude of 10,000 feet, a level that's usually reserved for, I don't know, small private planes or birds, not a massive commercial airliner. He knew the plane had an aft stairway, a feature that was unique to the Boeing 727, and he calmly ordered the crew to lower it. The crew felt a sudden, distinct change in cabin pressure and a slight shift in the plane's tail, and they knew in that exact moment he was gone. He had done it. Somewhere over southwestern Washington, a little after 8 p.m., the nondescript man with the black clip-on tie and a bag of cash had parachuted out of a flying plane and disappeared into the storm. The audacity of it is what makes it so mind-boggling. It's a paradox of meticulously planned details
and incredible recklessness. He knew about the aft stairs and he understood the flight parameters. But then he jumped into a freezing storm at night wearing a business suit and loafers. Experts would later say that it was a suicide mission even for a pro. But if he was a pro, why did he take an unusable sewn-shut parachute? Why did he have them land in Seattle when he could have just jumped with the money and left everyone on board? His actions defied all logic, and that's the reason this case has never been solved. It's a human puzzle that makes no sense, and humans can't stand a puzzle they can't solve. Stuffers, drop your wildest theory in the comments. The man was gone. Poof! He was now just a ghost in the machine. With the man gone, all that was left was the chase. The FBI, who had been listening to the entire ordeal from the ground, immediately launched one of the most extensive investigations in history. They combed over the plane for evidence. They started interviewing hundreds of people and tracking down every single lead. They even used an SR-71 Blackbird spy plane to retrace the flight path. But what they were really looking for was a ghost. And as we all know, ghosts don't leave much behind. Except, well, one key piece of evidence. And it wasn't the kind of evidence you'd expect a criminal mastermind to leave behind.
The FBI's investigation, a huge and unprecedented effort they codenamed NORJAC for Northwest Hijacking, had its work cut out for it. The case was unlike anything they had ever seen. Their team scoured the plane for any forensic evidence. They found fingerprints, and most importantly, Cooper's black clip-on tie. This tie would later yield a DNA sample, a piece of science that would have been pure science fiction in 1971, but has become a crucial part of the investigation in the decades since. The FBI considered more than 800 suspects in the first 5 years alone, but all of them were eliminated. The physical descriptions of Cooper provided by the flight attendants were nearly identical, which helped them eliminate most of the candidates. It's a testament to their dedication to finding this guy, but it also just goes to show how difficult it is to catch a ghost. One of the most famous suspects, a guy named Richard Floyd Jr., was so perfect that he's still the favorite of many armchair sleuths. He was an experienced skydiver, an ex-Green Beret, and a few months after Cooper's heist, he hijacked a plane in a nearly identical fashion, demanding ransom and parachuting out of the back. The FBI even arrested him, but he was ultimately ruled out because his physical description didn't match the eyewitness accounts. This is a perfect example of a classic red herring, a perfect distraction from the real target. The case of Richard Floyd McCoy Jr. adds an incredible layer of complexity to the mystery, revealing the frustrating nature of seeking justice when the most obvious suspect is definitively not the criminal. So the FBI had DNA, fingerprints, and a near-perfect copycat who wasn't the guy. They had leads that went nowhere, and a case that was slowly getting colder by the minute. With no body and no suspect, the only thing left of D.B. Cooper's legacy was $200,000 in unmarked bills. Or was it? Because 9 years after the heist, a young boy would find something that would blow this case wide open, and then immediately slam the door shut again.
9 years after the heist, in 1980, a boy named Brian Ingram was on a family vacation near the Columbia River in Washington, about 20 miles from the presumed drop zone. As he was raking the sand, he found something incredible. 3 bundles of rotting $20 bills, all held together by disintegrating rubber bands. He was like, "Whoa, found some money." And his dad was like, "Hold on a second, son. That looks a little too much like cash that just fell from the sky." They checked the serial numbers, and sure enough, they were a perfect match for the ransom money Cooper had received. It was the most concrete piece of evidence in the entire case. Finally, a breakthrough. And just like that, the puzzle got even more confusing. This money was found miles away from where the FBI had assumed Cooper had landed. It was buried, suggesting it had been there for a long time. But how did it get there? Did Cooper stash it and then perish? Did it just get swept downstream by the river? It provided a flash of hope for closure, only to deepen the enigma. This discovery is the ultimate twist in the story. It provided a key detail, but then introduced a new, baffling set of questions. It's almost as if the universe decided to give us a glimpse of the truth just to remind us that we might never get the whole story. The D.B. Cooper case is a classic example of a super conspiracy theory where a central event, the hijacking, becomes the foundation for a black and white world of good versus evil. People create elaborate theories not because they have evidence, but because they have a profound need to find meaning in a chaotic, unsolvable event. The D.B. Cooper case, in its own weird way, is a kind of perfect storm for this kind of thinking. It's not about politics or power. It's just a man disappearing with a bag of money, and our brains can't handle it. The discovery of the money perfectly aligns with the biblical principle that what is hidden will eventually be brought to light, but the fact that it only raised more questions proves that revelation can be incomplete or confusing, challenging our human need for definitive answers. So where does that leave us? The FBI officially closed the case in 2016, citing a redirection of resources to other investigative priorities. They had nothing new to work with. But the truth is, the story of D.B. Cooper is bigger than the FBI now. It has a life of its own in our culture. It's a permanent fixture in our collective imagination, a part of our American psyche. It's a ghost story we tell ourselves, an enduring symbol of defiance and disappearance. But why?
The story of D.B. Cooper is more than just a crime story. It's a modern-day folk tale. His legendary leap from the plane led to some very real, very permanent changes in air travel, like cockpit peepholes and mandatory passenger and luggage screening. The case is no longer just about the money or the man. It's about our enduring fascination with the unknown. We want to believe that someone could pull off the perfect crime, that a man could literally fall from the sky and walk away clean. It reminds us of the age-old stories where the underdog, or in this case a guy in a suit, outsmarts the system. The D.B. Cooper mystery also reminds us of a simple but profound principle, that everything hidden will eventually be brought into the open, and every secret will be brought to light. It's a powerful idea, isn't it? That no matter how well hidden something is, the truth will always have a way of revealing itself, even if it's in small, confusing pieces, like a bundle of rotting cash. Maybe the enduring part of the D.B. Cooper mystery is that it reminds us that while some truths may be hidden, the pursuit of justice and the hope that what's lost will be found is a universal principle that can bring us together. Okay, thanks for watching. Peace out. Goodbye, guys.